Hi y'all, how you doing? Friends, loved ones, families, and fools. Hey, I was just talking about forgiveness in part one and shared the story of the little soul and the sun by Neil Donald Walsh. Cried through that. And yeah, just sharing my process of forgiveness, which I started. I mean, gosh, it's just like a continuing process. It's a continual process, just like awakening is and just like discovery is. Because the eater, while eating, is being eaten. And so we're never aware of like our whole, full, true self in certain ways. There's parts of ourselves that we can't see, and that's where the reflection comes in too, as well. And the dual nature, and the twin, and the double, and the two. And so, yeah, I've been looking a lot at those things today and this week. And because they have been coming up to wink and show me different things. And so, yeah, I might have to share a little bit about that. But yeah, this morning I was going to look at the High Priestess, and I actually got the Chariot twice. And so I was like, okay, so the Chariot wants to be shared and included and received and allowed to be and opened to, you know, receptivity. So the Chariot, this is from Leigh McCloskey's book, Tarot Revisioned, and the Chariot is the number 7. And yeah, number 7's been coming up a lot. Number 7 in the major arcana of the 22 archetypes. And what Leigh McCloskey says about the Chariot. Listen not to me, but to the Logos. Wisdom is one. Heraclitus of Ephesus. The Chariot. The Chariot is the 7th key in the Tarot Arcana and is represented astrologically by the cardinal water sign Cancer. Cancer is associated with memory, emotion, and psychic receptivity. The moon rules Cancer, articulating its intimate connection to the subconscious mind, symbolized by the Empress and the unfathomable depth and mystery connected with the High Priestess. So the moon rules Cancer, articulating its intimate connection to the subconscious mind, symbolized by the Empress and the unfathomable depth and mystery connected with the High Priestess. The Chariot represents endless transformation within all states of being and becoming, while remaining always a stationary point of transcendent unity. It mirrors the Chinese Taoist idea of Wu Wei, actionless activity. The way of Tao symbolizes the ceaseless movement of returning to the great Tao, which is unmoving primordial unity. The sacred Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, gives a compelling insight into inner significance of this archetype. The book tells the story of Krishna and Arjuna, the true inner spiritual self, represented by Krishna, and the embodied mind by Prince Arjuna. So the book tells the story of Krishna and Arjuna, the true inner spiritual self, represented by Krishna, and the embodied mind by Prince Arjuna. Krishna is the chariot or vehicle, and Arjuna the charioteer. The book opens with 2 sides of a single family poised to war with one another. Arjuna asks Krishna to place his chariot between the 2 armies, which he does. Prince Arjuna becomes despondent, lamenting that he would rather allow himself to be killed than take up arms against his own blood. Krishna admonishes him that he must take sides, he must fight. In brief, the story is a great metaphor for the inner battles which rage within every individual, and signifies that only through proper understanding of contradictory impulse can one liberate oneself within the field of time. The psyche is composed of elements that lead toward illumination and those which would enslave it. The only course is action, but action that is guided by wisdom or receptivity to one's true inner nature. Krishna is the voice of Arjuna's conscience and his guide or vehicle for the performance of right action. The attribution of the water sign Cancer symbolizes the emotional nature operating on both a mundane and elevated level. It exists in 2 forms, separated at the beginning of the world. This world, including even hard stones and earth, is a congelation of water and of the water spirit. This world, including even hard stones and earth, is a congelation of the water spirit. The mundane quality is sulphurous and foul. When transformed by light and love, it becomes a sweet spirit of love. In the book of Genesis, God separated the waters above from the waters below. This is an apt analogy for the emotional nature of the individual that is likewise dual. The emotional nature becomes foul and sulfurous or stagnant and angry when it solely functions on the level of repetition and memories of past injury. The Chariot establishes a mode of receptivity that realigns the individual with the sweet spirit of love, allowing the eternal qualities of the feeling nature to consciously aid the embodied self as the voice of conscience and compassion. The dual nature of water corresponds to both temporal and eternal qualities. Within the world of time, the Chariot equates with the physical emotional body, whose organic being allows experience within a particular focus of reality. The watery element symbolized by the Chariot corresponds to sensitivity of feeling that acts within and upon the self in time. The corporeal self is the product of countless aeons of evolution, whose informing intelligence is automatic and for the most part unconscious. Its bioprogramming follows specific time-oriented guidelines and is genetically encoded with specific reality coordinates. This allows in certain sense data and automatically edits out that which does not make sense to the rational mind. So the corporeal self is the product of countless eons of evolution whose informing intelligence is automatic and for the most part unconscious. Its bioprogramming follows specific time-oriented guidelines and is genetically encoded with specific reality coordinates. This allows in certain sense data and automatically edits out that which does not make sense to the rational mind. So long as one believes oneself to be only defined by personality traits and nothing more, one remains bound within a particular level of perception and reality on an instinctive level. The Chariot teaches one how to navigate within the non-intellectual impulse and feeling nature. These qualities are timeless and remain constant regardless of the social, philosophical, or religious systems created by a particular culture. By learning that energy is both bounded and limitless, one allows the embodied self to maintain its focus within the field of time and be receptive to the guidance of the inner self on a conscious level. The universe is guided from within outwards. Every external act or emotion, conscious or unconscious, is preceded by impulse, desire, or will. Wisdom tradition maintains that the universe, with its evanescent, ever-changing forms, is guided, controlled, and regulated by an almost infinite series of synergies of intelligences. Like cells within the body, they serve a specific role in maintaining the overall health of the one-body universe. Historically, these intelligences have been called Elohim, angels, elementals, each corresponding to varying degrees of sentience and responsibility. Their underlying function is to serve as messengers and implementers of divine will and cosmic law. They represent inner principles and forces born from the spiritual heart of creation as the waters of immortality above flow into time below, transforming into the river of life, the currents of which continuously fluctuate, but whose source remains constant. So they represent inner principles and forces born from the spiritual heart of creation as the waters of immortality above flow into time below, transforming into the river of life, the currents of which continuously fluctuate, but whose source remains constant. The mode of consciousness attributed to the Chariot is known as the house of influence or the abode of inflowing power and suggests the influx of transpersonal energies conditioning and informing the psyche from within. The inflowing power of the Chariot emerges within the feeling nature and the undercurrents of the subconscious self, whose depth of purpose and influence remains a mystery to the personality. Much of what emerges from the darkness of the unknown or subconscious mind seems confused, disjointed, and strangely alien to the personality. When one sense of self is determined by the mirror image seen upon the reflective surface of time and not produced by penetrating its superficiality, the depths below, the subconscious can seem very forbidding and frightening. So when one sense of self is determined by the mirror image seen upon the reflective surface of time and not produced by penetrating its superficiality, the depths below, the subconscious, can seem very forbidding and frightening. The known self is only a point of reference and a point of departure for the exploration of deeper levels of consciousness that lead from the familiar into transcendental states of being and awareness. One of the problems encountered by contemporary minds is the belief that an impulse must make sense reasonably. It must have a real application. If not, it is ignored. Much of the inner guidance prompting an individual is not expressed in a familiar language. It registers within the body or is apprehended as a hunch or a feeling. To journey within the inner worlds of mind and imagination, one must learn and develop trust in the emotional nature in the same way that an athlete must learn to trust the natural intelligence of his body. The Chariot cultivates trust in subjective feelings and perceptions. Subjectivity must not be confused with mental fantasies or daydreams. True subjectivity is an inner doorway through which ideas and creative insight flow into conscious awareness. One must always remain vigilant in trying to discern between true vision and psychological phantasms. So I think I'll just leave it there. There's more, but I feel like that is a good place to stop right there. And so, yeah, that went along like perfectly with what I was looking at. And yeah, just being at war with ourselves in certain ways, our own dual nature. And like, yeah, looking at the rational intelligence and irrational intelligence, the practical and the irrational, you know, looking at that dual nature. Because that has been the theme for me, like for all of 2020, really, and continuing into 2021. And yeah, there's a whole lot about that that could be said, but maybe that's another video. And so a couple of other things that went along with, these lessons in forgiveness and letting go of resistance and different things, and also the element of fire and tempering the wisdom. Yeah, the Chariot and the word and logos. The wisdom is one. And the sulfurous and the foul liquid before it comes into contact with the sweet spirit of love, which I was also feeling. And on the 20th, I think I had written something about that, like about nectar and the love juice, because had been stewing in this poison for a very long time, but like little by little by little and bit by bit transmuting it, and bringing me back into alignment and into balance with myself, being at one, or becoming one with myself, becoming one at peace with myself. And that's like, one of the things. I am at peace with not knowing, and I trust the universe. I trust God and love, and I trust in myself. I trust in her love. I trust in life's love, and I trust in life's goodness and grace. Spring equinox energies and portal to create, manifest, and celebrate. Cleansing, composting, transmuting, transforming, releasing, dissolving, surrendering, emanating, penetrating, receiving, allowing, responding, engaging, awakening, opening, conceiving, enjoying, enjoining, envisioning, unifying, blessing, praising, thanking, forgiving, regenerating, discovering, embodying, being, creating, becoming, blooming, emitting, transmitting, imprinting, frequencies, codes, laws, wisdom, keys, the heart, the divine voice, the well-being. Awakening, opening, remembering, the journey, the gift, the discovery, knowing, honoring, loving, being, growing, sharing, becoming, caring for ourselves, caring for life, caring for love, caring for light, service and wholeness, healing, service to the whole, compassion, gratitude, faith, humility, wonder, awe, curiosity, joy, fullness, innocence, magic, generosity of spirit, signs, messages, symbols, souls and psyche's divine language, everything alive and talking to you. It has always been you. Are you listening? What or who are you listening to? A celebration of life, innocence, imagination, inspiration, play, and creativity, fertility, creative spirit, creative play, our responsibilities. Attention, love, expression, choice, intention, expectation, passion, desire, will, union, and action, care. Wisdom gained through experience, presence, and suspension, initiations, activations, integration, navigation, transformation, transmutation, reunion, and regeneration, faith, strength, grace, and willingness, the Chariot. Linking the inner and the outer, the twin, the double, the sacred flame, the dark and light together again, to gather, to blend, to synthesize in union. So, yeah. I don't know where... where did it go? Symbols, imagination, creativity, joys and passions, gifts and receptivity, optimism and acceptance, expectation with detachment, attention, intentions, reception, enchantment, anticipation, wonder, awe, curiosity, observation, listening, and engagement, letting go of resistance, suspending to be a witness, lessons in growth and forgiveness, forgiving, wisdom, abundance, and wholeness, wisdom gained through experience, power and presence and faith, gathering, remembrance, claiming our abilities to respond and to be, become, create, regenerate all the love we are in need. Yeah, and I was going back and looking at the Handless Maiden and what that story held for me. And when I shared it last week, I had just flipped open my book to page 444 and was drawn to the end of the page where there was a part 3, the wandering. And so the wandering was coming up, you know. But yeah, after looking at that story and looking into a couple of other wandering stories, and then I was just like, man, I wonder what that story's about. Because, like, yeah, just kind of coming into the middle of it was stage 3, but it did make so much sense to me. But yeah, I did go back and I started to read it, and I wanted just to share a little bit because it's so potent and so beautiful and so profound and so perfect for me right now. So maybe it will bless you as well. It's Initiation in the Underground Forest, chapter 14, which is Temperance in the Tarot, 14. And yeah, 7 times 2. There's a 7 and the 2 again. The Chariot and the High Priestess. So the Handless Maiden. If a story is seed, then we are its soil. Just hearing the story allows us to experience it as though we ourselves were the heroine who either falters or wins out in the end. If we hear a story about a wolf, then afterward we rove about and know like a wolf for a time. If we hear a story about a dove finding her young at last, then for a time after, something moves behind our own feathered breasts. If it be a story of wresting the sacred pearl from beneath the claw of the 9th dragon, we feel exhausted afterward and satisfied. In a very real way, we are imprinted with knowing just by listening to the tale. Among Jungians, this is called participation mystique, a term borrowed from anthropologist Levi Brule, and it's used to mean a relationship wherein a person cannot distinguish themselves as separate from the object or thing that they behold. Among Freudians, it's called projective identification. Among anthropologists, it's sometimes called sympathetic magic. All these terms means the ability of the mind to step away from its ego for a time and merge with another reality, that is, another way of comprehending, a different way of understanding. Among healers from my heritage, this means experiencing and learning ideas via a prayerful or non-ordinary state of mind, and bringing the insights and knowledge one has gained in the circumstances back into consensual reality. The Handless Maiden is a remarkable story, one in which we find the toes of the old night religions peeking out from under the layers of the tale. The story is formed in such a way that listeners participate in the heroine's test of endurance, for the tale has such amplitude that it takes long to tell it, and even longer to absorb. Customarily, I teach this tale over 7 nights' time, and sometimes, depending on the listeners, over 7 weeks, and occasionally 7 months' time, spending 1 night, week, or month for each labor in the story, and there is a reason for this. The story pulls us into a world that lies far below the roots of trees. From that perspective, we see that the Handless Maiden offers material for a woman's entire life process. It deals with most of the key journeys of a woman's psyche. Unlike other tales we have looked at in this work that speak to a specific task or a specific learning taking place over a few days or weeks' time, the Handless Maiden covers a many years-long journey, the journey of a woman's entire lifetime. So this story is something special, and a good rhythm for assimilating it is to read it and sit with your muse, turning it part by part over a generous period of time. The Handless Maiden is about women's initiation into the underground forest through the rite of endurance. The word endurance sounds as though it means to continue without cessation, and while this is an occasional part of the tasks underlying the tale, the word endurance also means to harden, to make sturdy, to make robust, strengthen. And this is the principal thrust of the tale and the generative feature of a woman's long psychic life. We do not just go on to go on. Endurance means we are making something substantial. The teaching of endurance occurs all throughout nature. The pads of wolf pups' paws are soft as clay when pups are born. It is only the ranging, the roaming, the treks on which their parents take them that toughen them up. Then they can climb and bound over sharp gravel, over stinging nettle, even over broken glass without being hurt. I have seen wolf mothers plunge their pups into the coldest streams imaginable, run until a pup is splay-legged and can hardly keep up, and then run some more. They are toughening up the sweet little spirit, investing it with strength and resilience. In mythos, the teaching of endurance is one of the rites of the great wild mother, the wild woman archetype. It is her timeless ritual to make her offspring strong. It is she who toughens us up, makes us potent and enduring. And where does this learning take place? Where are these attributes acquired? La selva subterranea, the underground forest, the underground of female knowing. It is a wild world that lives under this one, under the world perceived by ego. While there, we are infused with instinctive language and knowledge. From that vantage point, we understand what cannot be so easily understood from the point of view of the topside world. The maiden in this tale masters several descents. As she completes one round of descent and transformation, she plunges into yet another. These alchemical rounds are complete, each with a nigredo, loss, rebedo, sacrifice, and albedo, coming of light, following one upon the other. The king and the king's mother each have a round themselves. All this descending and loss and finding and strengthening portrays women's lifelong initiation into the renewal of the wild. The Handless Maiden story is called in different parts of the world Silver Hands, the Handless Bride, the Orchard. Folklorists number more than 100 versions of the tale, and the core of the literary version I've written here was given to me by my Aunt Magdalena, one of the great women, farmer field workers of my young life. Other variations are found throughout Eastern and Middle Europe, but truth be told, the deep womanly experience underlying the tale is found anywhere there is a yearning for the wild mother. My Aunt Magdalena had a sly storytelling habit. She caught her listeners off guard by beginning a fairy tale with, "This happened 10 years ago," and then proceeded to tell a tale from the medieval era, complete with knights, moats, and all. Or she'd say, "Once upon a time, just last week," and then she'd tell a tale about a time before humans wore clothing. And so here is the modern ancient Handless Maiden. Once upon a time, a few days ago, the man down the road still owned a large stone that ground the villagers' grain to flour. The miller had fallen on hard times and had nothing left but the great rough millstone in a shed and the large flowering apple tree behind it. One day, as he carried his silver-lipped axe into the forest to cut dead wood, a strange old man stepped from behind a tree. "There's no need for you to torture yourself by cleaving wood," wheedled the old man. "I shall dress you in riches if you will but give me what stands behind your mill." "What is there behind my mill but the flowering apple tree?" thought the miller, and agreed to the old man's bargain. "In 3 years' time I'll come and take what's mine," chortled the stranger, and he limped away, disappearing between the staves of the trees. The miller met his wife on the path. She had run from their house, apron flying, hair askew. "Husband, husband, at the stroke of the hour, into our house came a finer clock upon the wall. Our rustic chairs were replaced by those hung in velvet, and the paltry cupboards abounds now with game. Our trunks and boxes are overflowing. Pray tell, how has this happened?" And even at that moment, golden rings appeared on her fingers, and her hair was drawn up into a golden circlet. "Ah," said the miller, looking in awe at his own doublet turned to satin. Before his eyes his wooden shoes with the heels worn to nothing, so he walked tilted backwards. They too turned into fine shoes. "Well, it is from a stranger," he gasped. "I came upon an odd man in a dark frock coat in the forest, and he promised great wealth if I gave him what is behind our mill. Surely, wife, we can plant another apple tree." "Oh, my husband," wailed the woman, and she looked as though she had been struck dead. "The man in the black coat was the devil, and what stands behind the mill is the tree, yes, but our daughter is also there, sweeping the yard with a willow broom." And so the parents stumbled home, weeping tears on all of their finery. Their daughter stayed without husband for 3 years and had a temperament like the first sweet apples of spring. The day the devil came to fetch her, she bathed and she put on a white gown and stood in a circle of chalk that she'd drawn around herself. When the devil reached out to grab her, an unseen force threw him across the yard. The devil screamed, "She must not bathe any more, else I cannot come near her." The parents and the girl were terrified, and so some weeks went by and the daughter did not bathe until her hair was matted, her fingernails like black crescents, her skin gray, her clothes darkened and stiff with dirt. Then, with the maiden, every day more and more resembling a beast, the devil came again. But the girl wept and wept. Her tears ran through her fingers and down her arms, so much so that her dirty hands and arms became the purest white and clean. The devil was enraged. "Chop off her hands, otherwise I cannot come near her." And the father was horrified. "You want me to sever the hands of my own child?" The devil bellowed, "Everything here will die, including you, your wife, and all the fields for as far as you can see." The father was so frightened he obeyed, and begging his daughter's forgiveness, he began to sharpen his silver-lipped axe. The daughter submitted, saying, "I am your child. Do as you must." As this he did, and in the end no one could say who cried out in anguish the louder, the daughter or the father. Thus ended the girl's life as she had known it. When the devil came again, the girl had cried so much the stumps that were left of her limbs were again clean, and the devil was again thrown across the yard when he attempted to seize her. Cursing in words that set small fires in the forest, he disappeared forever, for he had lost all claim to her. So 3 times he came to claim her. The father had aged 100 years, and his wife also. Like true people of the forest, they continued as best they could. The old father offered to keep his daughter in a castle of great beauty and with riches for life, but the daughter said she felt it more fitting that she become a beggar girl and depend on the goodness of others for sustenance. And so she had her arms bound in clean gauze, and at daybreak she walked away from her life as she had known it. She walked and walked. High noon caused her sweat to streak the dirt on her face, and the wind dishevelled her hair until it was like a stork's nest of twigs, all tangled this way and that. In the midst of the night she came to a royal orchard where the moon had put a gleam on all the fruits that hung from the trees. She could not enter because the orchard was surrounded by a moat, but she fell to her knees, for she was starved. A ghostly spirit in white appeared and shut one of the sluice gates so that the moat was emptied. The maiden walked among the pear trees, and somehow she knew that each perfect pear had been counted and numbered, and that they were guarded as well. Nevertheless, a bough bent itself low, its limb creaking, so she could reach the lovely fruit at its tip. She put her lips to the golden skin of the pear and ate while standing there in the moonlight, her arms bound in gauze, her hair a fright, appearing like a mud woman, the handless maiden. The gardener saw it all, but recognized the magic of the spirit who guarded the maiden and did not interfere. After the girl finished eating the single pear, she withdrew across the moat and slept in the shelter of the wood. The next morning the king came to count his pears. He found one missing, and looking high and looking low, he could not find the vanished fruit. The gardener explained, "Last night 2 spirits drained the moat, entered the garden at high moon, and one, without hands, ate the pear that offered itself to her." The king said he would keep watch that night. At dark he came with his gardener and his magician, who knew how to speak with spirits. The 3 sat beneath a tree and watched. At midnight the maiden came floating through the forest, her clothes dirty rags, her hair awry, her face streaked, her arms without hands, and the spirit in white beside her. They entered the orchard the same way as before. Again a tree gracefully bent one of its boughs to within her reach, and she supped on the pear at its tip. The magician came close, but not too close to them, and asked, "Are you of this world or not of this world?" And the girl answered, "I was once of the world, and yet I am not of this world." The king questioned the magician, "Is she human or spirit?" The magician answered that she was both. The king's heart leapt, and he rushed to her and cried, "I shall not forsake you. From this day forward I shall care for you." At his castle he made for her a pair of silver hands, which were fastened to her arms, and so it was that the king married the handless maiden. In time the king had to wage war in a far-off kingdom, and he asked his mother to care for his young queen, for he loved her with all of his heart. "If she gives birth to a child, send me a message right away." The young queen gave birth to a happy babe, and the king's mother sent a messenger to the king telling him the good news. But on the way to the king, the messenger tired, and coming to a river, he felt sleepier and sleepier, and finally fell entirely asleep by the river's edge. The devil came out from behind a tree and switched the message to say that the queen had given birth to a child that was half dog. The king was horrified at the message, yet sent back a message saying to love the queen and care for her in this terrible time. The lad who ran with the message again came to the river, and feeling heavy as though he had eaten a feast, soon fell asleep by the side of the water. Whereupon the devil again stepped out and changed the message to say, "Kill the queen and her child." The old mother was shaken by her son's command and sent a messenger to confirm. Back and forth the messengers ran, each one falling asleep at the river, and the devil changing the messages that became increasingly terrible, the last being, "Keep the tongue and the eyes of the queen to prove she has been killed." The old mother could not stand to kill the sweet young queen. Instead, she sacrificed a doe, took its tongue and eyes, and hid them away. Then she helped the young queen bind her infant to her breast, and veiling her, she said she must flee for her life. The women wept and kissed each other goodbye. They wept and kissed one another goodbye. The young queen wandered till she came to the largest, wildest forest she had ever seen. She picked her way over and through and around, trying to find a path. Near dark, the spirit in white, the same one as before, appeared and guided her to a poor inn run by kindly woods people. Another maiden in a white gown took the queen inside and knew her by name. The child was laid down. "How do you know I am a queen?" asked the maiden. We who are of the forest follow these matters, my queen. Rest now." So the queen stayed 7 years at the inn and was happy with her child and her life. Her hands gradually grew back, first as little baby hands, pink as pearl, and then as little girl hands, and then finally as a woman's hands. During this time the king returned from the war, and his old mother wept to him, "Why would you have me kill 2 innocents?" and displayed to him the eyes and the tongue. Hearing the terrible story, the king staggered and wept inconsolably. His mother saw his grief and told him these were the eyes and tongue of a doe, and that she had sent the queen and her child off into the forest. The king vowed to go without eating or drinking and to travel as far as the sky is blue in order to find them. He searched for 7 years. His hands became black, his beard moldy, brown like moss, his eyes red-rimmed and parched. During this time he neither ate nor drank, but a force greater than he helped him live. At last he came to the inn kept by the woods people. The woman in white bade him enter, and he laid down so tired. The woman placed a veil over his face as he slept. As he breathed the breath of the deepest sleep, the veil billowed and gradually slipped from his face. He awakened to find a lovely woman and a beautiful child gazing down at him. "I am your wife, and this is your child." The king was willing to believe, but he saw the maiden had hands. "Through my travails and yet my good care, my hands have grown back," said the maiden, and the woman in white brought the silver hands from a trunk where they'd been treasured. The king rose and embraced his queen and his child, and there was great joy in the forest that day. All the spirits and the dwellers of the inn had a fine repast. Afterward, the king and queen and baby returned to the old mother, held a second wedding, and had many more children, all of whom told this story to 100 others, who told this story to 100 others, just as you are one of the 100 others I am telling it to. And then it goes into the first stage, the bargain without knowing. And then the second stage, it was so good. It was so good. I just had to eat it up and just devour this story because it was just nectar for me, the story. And so the second stage was the dismemberment. So the first stage, the bargain without knowing. The second stage, the dismemberment. And the third stage, the wandering. And then there are other stages as well. The fourth stage is Finding love in the underworld. The 5th stage. The harrowing of the soul. And the 6th stage. The realm of the wild woman. Zero to 7. Yeah, there's the 7 again. And so, yeah, 0 to 7, the age of the body and dreaming, socialization, yet retaining the imagination. So these phases are not meant to be tied inexorably to chronological age. For some women at 80 are still in the developmental young maidenhood, and some women at age 40 are in the psychic world of the mist beings, and some 20-year-olds are as battle-scarred as long-lived crones. The ages are not meant to be hierarchical, but simply belong to women's consciousness and to the increase of their soul lives. Each age represents a change in attitude, a change in tasking, and a change in values. So 0 to 7, age of the body and dreaming, socialization, yet retaining imagination. 7 to 14, age of separating, yet weaving together reason and the imaginal. 14 to 21, age of the new body, young maidenhood, unfurling, yet protecting sensuality. 21 to 28, age of new world, new life, exploring the worlds. 28 to 35, age of the mother, learning to mother others and self. 35 to 42, age of the seeker, learning to mother self, seeking the self. 42 to 49, age of early crone, finding the far encampment, giving courage to others. 49 to 56, age of the underworld, learning the words and rights. 56 to 63, age of choice, choosing one's world and the work yet to be done. 63 to 70, age of becoming watchwoman, recasting all one has learned. 70 to 77, age of re-euthanization. Re-euthanization rather than euthanization. That's funny. Re-euthanization and more cronedom. 77 to 84, age of the mist beings, finding more big in the small. 84 to 91, age of weaving with the scarlet thread, understanding the weaving of life. 91 to 98, age of ethereal, less to saying, more to being. 98 to 105, 98 to 105, age of pneuma, the breath. 105 and above, or beyond, age of timelessness. So I thought that was super interesting. But I super, super loved, yeah, this tale of the Handless Maiden, and then her breakdown of it, and interpretation, and like the wisdom nuggets that she offered and shared, and just wow, just everything that this held for me was so amazing. And yeah, so if I totally recommend this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, for anyone like who wants to familiarize themselves with some of these stories and remember who they are, and yeah, and just receiving and being open to receive, like, yeah, these gifts and these stories from the women who have come before us and from the women who knew, from the wild women and their inner truth, their inner knowing. Yeah. So yeah, it's just amazing, like all of these things. And maybe for my next video, maybe I will share a little bit about the first and the second stage. And yeah, because there was a lot, there were a lot of gems and so much gold in it. But I was reminded, like, this week to go back and look at something, because I've been working with snake medicine, and in those lessons of forgiveness, and those and in that forgiveness of that betrayal and that rejection and that exile and the abandonment. And I had remembered that I flipped open my Greek mythology book. It's like this all-color Greek mythology book by Richard Patrick. It's like a green cover. I got it at a library sale, and I was intending to use the art for soul collage, but I liked the book so much that I thought, nah, I'm going to keep this one. I'm not going to cut it up. And so I'm glad I did. But I had flipped open this page. I can't even remember when it was, if it was like at the end of summertime, but it opened up to page 48. And this plate 62 is about Asclepius, the god of healing and medicine. That is according to Hesiod. To Homer, he was a mortal who was taught the art of healing by Chiron, the centaur. Hesiod made him the son of Apollo by the nymph Coronis, which I thought was so weird. Hesiod made him the son of Apollo by the nymph Coronis, who proved faithless to her divine lover, and he complained to his sister Artemis, who killed the nymph with arrows. And then, while watching her funeral pyre burn, Apollo was filled with remorse, and he snatched the unborn child of Coronis from the flames. The child was Asclepius, and Apollo entrusted him to the care of Chiron. The versions of Homer and Hesiod agree, at least on the point, that it was from Chiron that he learned the art of healing. Asclepius sometimes incurred the wrath of Zeus and his brother Hades. His skill as a healer could deprive Zeus of revenge by bringing his victim back to life, and deprive Hades' kingdom of inhabitants simply by ensuring that they did not die. He is shown here with his staff and his serpent emblem, which signified renewal. I don't know if you can see that. Right there. And so, yeah, this is like super, super interesting with like the fire. And looking into that, like where the nymph Coronis was unfaithful to her lover Apollo, and Apollo was mourning that betrayal, and so his sister, the twin, his twin sister, killed her with arrows, and then they were burning her body, but it's like, but the child was still alive. There was, yeah, and so it's like reminding me of the phoenix, yeah. And also like the dragon fire in a lot of ways too. And so, yeah, that was just something I wanted to include because that had been coming up again. And so there's a lot in that I get to explore and just be open to receiving. And so thank you for listening and for letting me share my journey with you. I hope it serves and I hope it inspires you. And may we all forgive ourselves and forgive one another and be open to what's possible and what we can bring in forth and through our own being to renew our own lives, renew our own hearts, renew our own minds, renew like the truth that we are and all that we really are. And so, yeah, happy healing, happy revealing, happy spring, happy fertility, celebrating life, joy, and our fertility, our ability to create, our ability to sustain life, and our ability to renew ourselves and revivify our lives. Yeah, through like this forgiveness and forgiving for the generosity of spirit and being willing to surrender and trust in, yeah, trust in the love that we are, trust in ourselves and trust in where we're being guided on our journey and our own path through our own lives and through our own hearts. Like, yeah, let's awaken to that and let awaken to all these parts that are asking for inclusivity, integration, and forgiveness. And may we all be present and be a witness, be a compassionate witness. Okay. I love you all and I thank you all and I bless and praise you all. I celebrate you all and I celebrate life. I celebrate all this love for us all. Okay. Be well, be love, be true, be love for yourself, be love for your whole self. Okay. Talk to you again soon. Bye for now.